All right, so we like to pretend that America is based off of Greek democracy. That is not even close to the truth. In specific, we pretend it's based on Athenian democracy. It's obviously not based on Spartan democracy because there was no such thing. Um, so when we got a police officer in one of these protests, he gets separated from the rest of them, and this picture keeps going through my mind over and over and over again. All of these protesters standing out there protecting this lone police officer. This is the equivalent of Jews protecting an SS officer during World War II. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's phenomenal, and it shows the better side of humanity. Now, we've got 10,000 protesters, and 10 of them are violent, and we want to claim that these are violent gatherings. No, 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 no. If we don't get to judge the cops that way, if we don't get to judge the cops that way, you don't get to judge protesters that way. Especially when police are going into the crowd, grabbing people. That doesn't need to happen. These police officers, if these protesters are not coming at them, there is no reason for these officers to step forward and grab people. And some of the people that they're grabbing, old people, and literally little girls. One of the girls that the police grabbed, she wasn't very tall. She was maybe 7 to 11 years old. It's difficult to tell based on everything that was going on and the fact that she was on the ground and they were dragging her. And then you got all these people saying, well, you shouldn't bring your kids to a riot. They didn't bring their kids to a riot. They brought their kids to a protest, and the police pushed it to a riot. You notice when the police, even black police officers, when the KKK does their marches, you notice these officers walk alongside them instead of barricading them in. What the hell? It's a big, big difference, isn't it? Meanwhile, the majority of the public says, hey, we don't want nothing to do with the KKK. We don't like the KKK. We do like black people. But you know what? It's not the majority of white people who like black people that are the problem. It's your fucking granny ass neighbor who calls 911 every time she sees a black person in the neighborhood. Now, yeah, sure, someday your granny is gonna fucking die of old age, and thank fucking goodness we'll get rid of her bitty old ass. However, until she does finally fucking croak over, we need to do something about the fact that she is still alive. She is going to continue to call the cops on these bullshit fucking calls. The way that the cops respond to that is not appropriate. Yes, we know there are a lot of people out there like that. I know people in this town that if they see a black person or a homeless person walking down the street, the police are going to get a phone call. I have had nearly every sheriff that has been here since I've lived here tell me, yeah, dude, fucking, I get calls about you all the time because you got a backpack on, and, you know, if you don't wear the same style of clothes every day, people think you're somebody new walking through town, and they think you're the dude who stole all their shit. Every time we have a homeless person come through Chapel, Nebraska, I've had this stolen and I've had that stolen, and I heard there's a homeless person in town. It's even worse if you're homeless and black. Now, we've been doing a lot of work here. I mean, when I first moved here in 1995, There was a lot of gay people that I went to school with, and I didn't say nothing. I mean, at that current point in time, we had, for example, we had next state over, Wyoming, just as fucking racist and redneck as we got here. They dragged a homosexual behind a Toyota pickup truck until that homosexual had no head. And when I was in high school, somebody read that off in Mr. E's class. We had to read off on Friday, current news events. Somebody read that off, and quite a few boys in the class had some very, very nasty jokes to tell in class. Did they get in trouble? Mr. E, he didn't like racism, and he said something, but that's all he did. They didn't get sent to the office or anything of that nature. What we're dealing with is that all of these groups, they want the rules different for them than they want for the other groups. The cops want their special rights, and they have them. Minorities want their special rights, and in some cases they have them, and in some cases they don't. There's a lot of people who are going through this, but because they're not part of your group, and you want to focus just on your group, like it's only happening to your group. It's not. It's happening to all of us. The more poor you are, the less the cops are on your side. The more likely it is that you're going to be wrongly convicted and fucking kangaroo courted, and it doesn't matter what color you are. The police use color as an indicator of poverty, but it's not always correct. In Boulder, police have to worry about going after black people because that black person might be a star on the CU basketball team. That person might in the future play for the Denver Nuggets or some professional basketball team elsewhere. They might play football there. And cops have spoken about this in Boulder. But you look at the so-called colored people, as a lot of folks are saying right now, especially in this area. A lot of these older folks, that's the only word that they know that they don't think is offensive. They're like, well, you know, when the stuff that we called them growing up, you're not allowed to call them that anymore. Back then, we didn't think nothing of it because there weren't any around here. Well, I can kind of get that. I don't agree with it. The only time where I actually accept racism is from people who grew up in the system. And I don't accept the racism out here. When they tell me about the racism in the system, I already know. It's that part right there where they're telling me about the racism, about what it's like being a black in the system, what it's like being a white in the system, what it's like being Hispanic in the system, or Native American in the system. I'm not saying that I agree with racism on the outs. I'm saying that when you're locked up, you don't have a fucking choice. That's what there is. That is what you have as a choice, or you can try to escape. All right? With most of the kids that I was locked up with the minorities instead of going to the places that white kids usually go, because white kids usually have white parents who care about that white child. Well, my dad was in prison for cocaine. My mom was in rehab for cocaine. And it was court-appointed rehab, and she had to finish a 6-month program before she was allowed to have us back. And she just couldn't finish the fucking program. I've been beaten up more for the color of my skin than nearly anybody I know. And the only people that I know who have been beaten up more for the color of their skin than me are actually white kids who grew up in the system, same as me. Some of them were in worse facilities than me by a lot. But then again, when you're in the system, you also get to see how you, as a white kid, because a lot of these guards, they see that you're a white kid and that you're taking this much extra punishment because of the color of your skin, and they feel bad for you. And to some degree, some of those people will actually defend you or protect you. I had one staff member, his name was Arel. This is in Orcas Cottage in Child Study and Treatment Center in Tacoma, Washington. Him and a guy named another staff member who is Command Sergeant Major Reuben Greer. These men both sat down with some of the other black kids and myself and fucking basically explained to them kind of the situation. They explained that where I lived was in, well, I lived in the area that Lincoln High School is in. That's the minority high school in Tacoma. They explained that I grew up in the system. A lot of these kids already knew that. They also explained that they had rescued most of these kids from me enough times that they were sick of it and that you got to give the white boys some respect. Obviously, Command Sergeant Major Reuben Greer and Rel were both black men. A lot of the respect that I earned in there, and it is respect. I mean, there is the fear once you beat the living shit out of somebody. They do, to some degree, fear you. But there are a lot of people that I fought with that they won the fight, and afterwards they were completely cool with me. And that's happened a lot, too. In the system, a lot of times you never get to finish your fight. And then you have the same fight every day, whether it's in the rec room or whatever. And eventually they'll ship one of y'all to another cottage. There were 3 cottages at Child Study and Treatment Center. Sorry, my nose is clogged up. Allergies, wind, all that shit. But the thing is that you also have to try to put yourself in another person's shoes. Like for a lot of these black kids that I was locked up with, and it wasn't just black kids. I mean, depending on where I was at, if I was in Colorado, there were also a lot of Hispanic kids. When I was in Washington State, there was a lot of mostly Cambodians and some Vietnamese, and, you know, I mean, and a lot of them you can't say Asian. A lot of the Cambodians up there, they're like, I'm not Asian, I'm Cambodian, all right? That's like saying you're North American. I mean, yeah, you're North American, but you're an American. You're not Canadian, you're not Mexican. There's a big difference between you guys and Canadians, and a big difference between you guys and Mexicans. All right, well, I get it. Yeah, you're right. We are different from Canada. This is an entirely English-speaking country with the exception of the Southeast, where some of it is still a little bit French-speaking. That's Canada's mostly French-speaking on the East Coast, I believe, and I could be wrong about that. I've never actually been to Canada, never been to Mexico either. And Mexico, that's a different language altogether. But what we've got right now is we've got cops saying, and people who are wanting to defend the cops saying, well, you can't go after all cops for the bad actions of a few apples. But then those very same people are the ones who are pointing out all of this stuff. These are peaceful protests where people have been antagonized and bullied and pushed to the limit by police. And instead of doing that whole bad apple thing, you're like, oh, well, they're all bad. Look at what they are doing. Look, they are rioting. These black people are out of control. The people I saw the most out of control were white people. That stuff, CNN Center that I was watching, there was a white dude with a skateboard who was doing quite a bit. White dude with a skateboard. Now, there was a bunch of black people that I saw there too, wearing their masks and all that. And what were the majority of them doing? They were taking their cameras and they were holding them up and they were recording it. recording it. Another thing is, all of the white people that showed up, even the dumbasses doing shit like that during a peaceful protest, to all of the white people who showed up to protest the inequality that is obviously happening here, because I'm not going to pretend that race has nothing to do with it. I mean, that's definitely a byproduct of the issue. Yes, we need to stand up for our black brothers and sisters and our native brothers and sisters as well. We need to stick up for our white brothers and sisters, for our immigrant brothers and sisters, and the native born. We're human beings, and as long as we keep listening to all of this propaganda that separates us as not being human beings, then we're going to be at each other's throats instead of making effective change by working together. For every white person who was at those protests, there was a decreased chance of innocent black people being shot. I saw one picture where it was a whole bunch of white people standing out in front of the black people, and it was talking about how, white people think that they're superior and that, they think that they should be at the front of a march even though they're not black. I'm like, that's not what's going on here. Y'all have seen the South Park movie, right? Operation Hide Behind Darky or Operation Human Shield. Yeah, well, in that movie, it's a whole bunch of white people hiding behind a whole bunch of black people. But in this particular case, it was a bunch of white people standing out in front of a bunch of black people to protect them from harm. Just as many of those black people, when that officer got cornered by himself, they surrounded him, not facing him, but facing the crowd. No, we are not going to let you hurt this man. We are not going to let you put your knee on this man's neck. We are not going to let you asphyxiate this man. We are not going to let you beat this man in the head with bricks. We're not going to let you light this man on fire. We're not going to let you run him over with a vehicle. We are not going to let you hurt this person. We need a lot more of that. Now, the big difference between being black and being a police officer is that if you're a police officer, that is a decision that you made. You want to decide not to be a police officer and not take the guff that comes from sticking up for all of these rotten police officers. You can take off your badge and your uniform and walk around as if you're anybody else. A black man can't take his skin off and put it in his closet, fold it up and put it in his dresser, put it in the trunk of his car. If you're homeless, you have to have that backpack. It saves your life, and you will be victimized for having that backpack. But there are scenarios where you're able to hide that backpack, and you have an incredibly increased chance of having your stuff stolen if you hide your backpack. But at least when you're not wearing that backpack, you have more of a chance of being treated like a human being. But you're also anxious the whole time because you're afraid of your shit getting stolen while you're going to this job interview. A black man can't do that. There's a lot of stuff as far as the protests go that I don't agree with. I don't agree with the segregation. I don't. And I hear a lot of black folks saying that, well, now you know what it feels like. No, I've known what it feels like my whole life, all right? I'm different. People who are different, people are afraid of. Most of the people in this area, they are scared shitless of black people. They are, because they don't know any. All they know, they fucking heard from Boys in the Hood and Gangster Rap. Oh, these black people love violence and murdering each other. Fuck, no, they don't. How the fuck would you, as a white guy in fucking the middle of the country, right outside of Chapel, Nebraska. How the fuck are you going to know what it's like in Compton? How the fuck are you going to know what it's like in Harlem? How the fuck are you going to know what it's like in Houston, fucking Texas? I mean, this shit is everywhere. And it all comes down to them racist assholes. I'm afraid of black people, and I see one walking down the street, so I'm going to call 911. The police can shoot that black man by claiming that they were afraid of an unarmed man. But how are you supposed to react with a gun in your face? You are unarmed, and you're not allowed to be afraid for your life from a group of people with histories of defending each other when they do wrong, of taking care of their own, as you want to call it. You know, the SS soldiers took care of their own, and they still lost that war. Now, didn't they? There are a lot of Germans after World War II that spent the rest of their lives trying to make amends. Former members of the SS helped to get Israel weapons when they weren't even a country yet. That's how quick some of these people started making amends. There was a Dachau concentration camp and Auschwitz. Both those places, they took people from the way. They were named for the area they were in. It would be like if they had a concentration camp outside of Chapel, Nebraska, it would be concentration camp at Chapel, Nebraska. So, when they were liberated, they took all of the Germans from the local town, made them march through the concentration camp, see all the bodies, take the full tour. A lot of those people, especially from those two towns, afterwards they took part in a lot of humanitarian stuff. A lot of these people were highly religious, and after seeing that, it's one thing hearing rumors and another thing seeing it firsthand. The other thing is that most of those people did not have plausible deniability. I mean, many of the portions of Dachau and Auschwitz were on the main road into town. God and everybody saw that already. They just didn't see the open pits and the terrible shit at the very end. I mean, a lot of these places, they did put foliage and trees and stuff around it, so you couldn't see in that well. And if you weren't paying attention, you probably wouldn't know nothing. But at the same time, we need to do something now. All right? We need to do something before we have a whole bunch of white people who are hiding black people in their basements and their attics and in artificial crawl spaces in the walls. And I know a lot of y'all are like, we can't have that kind of race war here. We absolutely can. All it takes is a whole bunch of racists in one area to decide they're just going to get rid of all the black folks, and they can do it before the National Guard gets called in. They have the numbers, they have the weapons. Although black people are around 12% of the population, and it only takes about 2% of the population to stage an effective coup. That means if 2 to 3% of the black population were to arm themselves today, the war could be over by tomorrow. And it could be done without anybody getting shot. I mean, a lot of these scenarios where people are just trying to defend themselves against police, they're getting riddled by bullets. There was that guy who was killed just a few months ago that I posted up. And as soon as I posted it up, they took it down. I posted it up again, and then I put this thing over it saying that, you have to agree to take a look at it. And then a couple of months later, finally, there's other people like, look how fucked up this is. I'm like, I know, I posted it up when it happened, guys. Like Darren O'Connor, when I was trying to work with him, it was before Natalie was killed, and pardon me, for years before that, it was to get video camera equipment to record these people's stories and to have someone there on station to record the police and how they treat us. And that does include racism. I am not going to pretend that there was no racism from the police in Boulder, Colorado. I saw a lot of it. Mark Swanigan was one of their biggest fucking targets. Now, yes, they like to harass Mark Swanigan, but also Mark Swanigan, despite the fact that he's an older black man, he looks very young. He's a very good-looking feller. And no, I'm not a homosexual for saying that. I understand an equal sense of proportion. I understand that his build is an important thing to look at. Aesthetically, he is a healthy individual. And so when he's got little white college girls hitting on him, that's when the police want to come up and really, really rag on him. Like, yeah, he's gonna have college girls hitting on him. That's one of the other things that really reciprocates rape in our society. Not just rape, but the whole rape culture is that we turn a blind eye to who it is that's doing it, who it is taking a part in it. And I understand what the police did to Mark Swanigan was not rape. Okay, I'm not trying to compare that with rape. What I'm trying to compare is the fact that because Mark Swanigan was a black man, a lot of people just assumed that he was going to rape some white girl in fucking Boulder. No, hold on a second. Hold on a second. No. And a lot of black people in Boulder have voiced their opinions about being treated that way. Like, yeah, every time that somebody gets abused, they always want to come at the fucking black homeless people. And I explained to those folks, I'm like, it's not just the black homeless people who have to deal with that. I'm dealing with it at Starbucks because some girl was raped supposedly by a homeless person. And then it turned out that dude wasn't even homeless. It turned out that kid was a college student who had dreads. But situations like that happen all the time. Now, when it happens to a homeless person, we can't even get the police to take our report. We have to get someone to go in with us. And unless it's a situation where you're able to get 10, 15, 20 people to go in with you, the police are going to do the same bullshit that they always do. So what you need is you need to have those cameras and you need to have them turned on. Well, what if you're trying to show them a bunch of evidence that's on this and this is the only camera that you got? In a lot of these situations, I was able to use different technologies that I got to make it work. Recording the police is the most important part, though, and taking people with you. That is what I saw at CNN Center from the majority of those black folks. And then there's that part where there's this Asian dude, and the way that he types, it shows that he doesn't really understand the English language that well, and he keeps repeating a lot of the same political jargon. But he took a picture of, there's 6 people that are protecting businesses, right? And they're all, within all 6 they're standing in would be half of this trailer. I mean, they're pretty close together. And this person took a picture of just the 2 white guys, and it's a whole bunch of stuff about the KKK and a bunch of stuff about, well, a whole bunch of shit. And you know how Facebook has this fact-checking thing. Well, they didn't do the fact-checking thing on that, and I've checked it a few times since then. They still haven't done the fact-check thing on that. Meanwhile, the fact-check thing on Donald Trump, that ended up actually being true, but Facebook is keeping it up because they don't want to be punished by Donald Trump, who is trying to get all sorts of laws made so they can't say nothing bad about Donald Trump. Oh my God. Because Donald Trump wants special treatment too. He's already got the most special treatment in the United States of fucking America. He is the most pampered human being in the country. And he wants us to powder his ass, powder his nose, and wipe for him. Holy fuck! Donald Trump, don't ask us to do anything you're not willing to do. And don't use the name of George Floyd to try to justify sending troops in to literally kill people. If you're willing to kill people over things, you are not a human being, and you need to either step down or be locked the fuck up. And that goes for everybody who carries a badge. That goes for every nurse. That goes for every doctor. That goes for every lawyer, every public pretender, every judge, and every level of government. If you cannot do your job, if you cannot hold to your oaths, I am not going to help you. I am not going to pay you. You are my enemy by your choice. You need to wear your body cameras, and you need to treat every human being as if they. You need to investigate both sides. When you investigate, you need to investigate both sides. You cannot be allowed to investigate yourselves. You let yourselves go way too much. We've seen a lot of white officers do a lot of messed up stuff, including murder, and get away with it. But now, 5 out of 6 cops that took part in the tasering of those young men who were recording them were black officers, and their suspension was immediate. That shows 2 things. Number 1, yes, there is racism within the department. But number 2, it shows that this isn't a racism thing. It shows that it is a power and control thing. These black officers are traitors. The people that they are helping are the bad guys. When you help to cover for the wrongdoing of another officer, even if it's by choosing not to investigate, and that was the mildest thing that I had to deal with, getting blown off. There was also the being threatened with abuse and with imprisonment if I continued to try to speak out against officers. A lot of people have to deal with racism. The racism that I had to deal with, Arel explained to me that I had to deal with that racism because these people had to deal with racism. I learned that most of the people who sexually abused me were sexually abused themselves. Does that make these people good people? No, it doesn't. Does that make what they did to me okay? No, it doesn't. But it lets me know that the choice in whether or not I reciprocate that is my decision. Lucky for me, I don't see children as sexual objects, but then again, I don't see adults as sexual objects. I don't see men or women as sexual objects. Me and most of you aren't even close to the same. I'm not after sex, and I'm sure not going to get drunk to go get sex because I don't like getting drunk. I don't even like drinking. Now, to say that these are violent riots, no, they're not. There are violent people involved, but these are peaceful protests. If there are 10,000 people who are peaceful and there are 6 people who are doing bad shit, are they all doing bad shit? And then you look at what the police are doing, just going out into the streets and fucking slamming people down and dragging them off and all sorts of fucked up shit like that. Like, these people aren't being violent. They're shooting camera crews in the throats, and you care about a camera crew getting shot in the throat. You're like, fuck, they shot that white guy in the fucking throat. That is so fucked up. How do you know he was a white guy? First of all. And second of all, why are you so pissed off about him getting shot in the throat But you're not pissed off about George Floyd being fucking dead. And it's not just him. I know a lot of black homeless people. I have gotten to see their victimization by the police and by college students. And I happen to know that many of them are dead. Due to negligence. Most Native Americans are killed by exposure. That is the number one way for them to be killed. You drive them out in the country and you drop them off and you leave them there and they fucking freeze to death. But then again, that might not actually be true. They said that Selena Not Afraid died of exposure before they ever did an autopsy. They had already made their decision. You know how fucking disgusting that is. Why are you even doing an autopsy if you have already decided? The other thing is that people were riding by where she was found on horses. There were people walking by that area on foot. They found her a week later. That is so screwed up. This isn't just a black issue. This is a poor issue. Most of the racist white people that I know are racist because they're poor and they want someone who is lower on the social totem pole to take it out on, or someone else they can blame, or they are told through the media that it's black people's fault. Black people are doing this. Black people are doing this. Look at all the things that black people are doing. And then you've got the TV telling you that black people are like this and black people are like that. I mean, we've got TV training a new generation of poor white people that black people are a way that they're not. I grew up with black people. I grew up with white people. Well, not a lot of white people, mostly staff members. Thank you, HD. HD type congrats on 800 subscribers. I watch and like all these videos, but the algorithm pushes more of these videos to the public eye. If there is anything else I can do to help you, you only need to ask. There are some of my videos on here that are scary as fuck. It's me having a severe panic attack. It's always over not being able to see my loved ones and the fact that I haven't had a moment's rest as far as the courts go and all of that goes since all of this started. Um, I'd like you to go back and take a look at some of them scary videos. I mean, right now I'm able to talk calmly and collectively, but there's a lot of stuff that I got recently that I didn't have before. And even having those things with all of the extra stuff that has been added on top of my mountain of bullshit that is my launch pad. I mean, I gotta try to do some amazing stuff with, oh my God, just so much. But if I'm able to get this done, I honestly can't say that it's because of anything I did. I mean, I can, but I can't say that I did it alone because I didn't. There's a lot of evidence that I have that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for others. There's a lot of evidence that I have that I wouldn't have if it hadn't been for Rose Kelly or Danica Garner. Evidence that I have that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for Rochelle Shelley Campbell or if it weren't for Alicia Bollinger. Stuff that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for Shannon Alvarado or Dan Faber. Stuff that I wouldn't have if it weren't for Carmia, aka Cara Rogers, or Aaron Cockerham, or Layla Johnson Dunan, or Lana and Amanda Engeline. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm thankful for. There's a lot of stuff that I have that I had good reason to be thankful for. But also, a lot of that stuff I had to be a complete and total asshole to get. So there's that as well. But I want you to go back and take a look at some of those. I mean, there are some situations where I just, after everything that happened, I just broke down like a dog. You know, I mean, there was one part where um, there's a woman named Anna, and she and I were talking about when Danny died behind the pedestrian shop. And there's a guy named Tony DeStassi, and his conversation on here is about the same thing. Tony was the manager there. He was the one who was going to give Danny mouth to mouth. And Anna, she was one of the employees there, and she gave me a hug even though I stunk. All of the people there at the pedestrian shop were good to me, and all of the people at Starbucks were good to me. I want you to seriously go back through some of my older videos, take a look at some of the places that I've been, some of the situations, type in some of the names, some of the things that I had to say back to these other people weren't very nice. And I want you to understand that I'm not always nice. I'm not always speaking prim and proper. I'm not that guy. Since October 18th of 2015, I've been living in hell. Screwing up my back took away my ability to take care of myself. And there are actually studies being done now and studies that have been done in the past that show that, yeah, you get a back injury and it messes with your mental abilities as well. People can see that you're able to walk, so you must be able to do all of these things that you were magically able to do before. And at that point, it is magical. Because at that point, you literally can't do what it is these people want you to do. You can't do the things that you were able to do a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago. You can't do those things, and you still can't do those things. And when you try, you hurt yourself. You're like, you know what? Being able to do that would be magic at this point. Just like for Jeff, being able to stand up and walk, that would be magic. That would be a miracle. Of course, he is around my mom's age, and he's been in a wheelchair since he was in either middle school or high school. He also happens to be Native American. One of his friends growing up here was Lupe Haracha. Lupe Haracha is about the closest we had to a black or a Mexican in this town. And that was like for years and years. And Lupe was always good to me. Never had a problem with him. He was a tanker in the military, and he's a biker, and he's a family man, and he's never done me wrong. So when I hear about people blaming everything on blacks and Mexicans, it's always funny to me because the closest thing we had to a black or a Mexican was Lupe Haracha, and he moved.